So now you have got the horse's mouth to get the answers from the horse's mouth. So friends, Network Thakrar will be dealing in the topic of investment in India of movable properties and outside India by residents. As far as Natubai is concerned, we normally call him Natubai, a very dear friend of mine in Chambers. He was the past chairman of the International Taxation Committee of Chamber of Tax Consultants. His areas of specializations are FEMA and international taxation. He regularly contributes for FEMA updates in the Chamber's journal, a monthly journal of the Chamber of Tax Consultants. He has co-authored foreign publications like International Taxation or Compendium, FEMA and Non-Resident Taxation published by Malay Chamber of Tax Consultants, referential on FEMA by the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and remittance under Section 195 practical aspects published by the Chamber. He regularly gives lecture on international taxation, transfer pricing, FEMA. So I think we have got a very good personality. With this few words, I request Parimal Parikh to hand him over a token as a mark of our token and love and affection.
Parimal Bhai, Rajesh, Varsa, Nitin Bhai and friends. At the outset, I am extremely thankful to the Chamber for giving me this excellent opportunity. To brush up, I would say that this subject, FEMA is such a subject that it keeps on, like those of you who are dealing in service tax, they know that we keep on getting regular circulars. In the same way in FEMA also, it's a process of regular updating. And only yesterday we have received updated API guidelines. So I would admit that as far as if there are any major changes in real estate policy, then whatever I speak today would be subject to the API guidelines which have been released yesterday. But I have cursorily glanced through and I have not been able to notice any major changes in the real estate policy. So with these friends, we go to the subject proper. The subject given to me is investment in real estate in India as well as outside India, and it includes not only the kind of investments that you are making for your own stay, house, say you are buying house in India or house abroad, but this would also include some investment for strategic or business purposes. So it is a case of FDI in real estate in India, and when you are undertaking some construction development projects abroad, then I will just pass through those subjects. I am aware that there is a detailed session dealing with FDI in all various sectors, but I will only touch upon FDI in real estate. So what we are going to understand is what is the regulatory framework that governs investment in this real estate in India and abroad. What is the meaning of NRI and PIO? Because this is one area we need to clearly understand, because the meaning of NRI will vary for different notifications depending on the meaning of PIO. If there is one notification, there is a liberal interpretation of PIO. There is another notification, especially real estate, you will see that there is a restricted meaning given to PIO. Then when we talk about FDI, we also talk about investment branch of a foreign company, and there are issues relating to the transfer of real estates. Then investment abroad in real estate by individuals and companies, FDI in real estates, and investment abroad by individual persons. And if there are any questions left at the end, then I would be happy to deal with those questions. So as far as regulatory framework is concerned, it is the FEMA Act, and especially Section 3 is a governing section which empowers Reserve Bank of India to formulate regulations. And as far as acquisition of immobile property is concerned, it is Section 6(3)(I), which empowers Reserve Bank of India to form regulations. And in exercise of those powers, Reserve Bank of India issued notification number 21 for purchase by NRIs and PIOs in India, except for a lease not exceeding 5 years. So lease is understood to be a current account transaction. So when a property is taken on lease no approvals are required. It is for a genuine bona fide business purposes. The lease which is not exceeding a period of 5 years, RBI approvals are not required. It is a kind of a current account transaction. But any lease exceeding a period of 5 years would be treated as an investment in immobile property. Then there are press notes and FDI policies. So those of you who are keeping track of this FDI, earlier you may be aware that this DIBP used to issue press notes every year, various press notes, and it was very difficult for people to keep a track. So it has now become, since past 2 years, Government of India has been issuing consolidated FDI policy. Earlier, when they started, they were issuing every 6 months that policy. But since last year, they decided that since there are not many changes in the policy, they keep on issuing every year. It is in the month of April that normally they issue this consolidated FDI policy, and it is issued by a circular. So yesterday only they have issued. It is 17th April, which you can download from DIPP website, and that talks about the entire FDI gamut in India. So, and in exercise of the powers which are delegated to Reserve Bank, and in line with the industrial policy or the FDI policy, Reserve Bank issues notifications. So the governing notification as far as this inbound investments are concerned is notification number 20. That is a transfer and issue of issue by persons residents outside India. So those non-residents who are investing, they will be governed by this notification. And as I've said, we will be only dealing with real estate FDI in India. As far as immobile property outside India is concerned, it is section 63H, which is empowering Reserve Bank to regulate these kind of transactions. And in exercise of that powers, again, Reserve Bank has issued notification number 7 for investment in real estate outside India. And there is a notification number 120, which talks about all full-fledged outbound investments. But what we'll be talking is only investment in the real estate projects outside India. Another aspect, I think by this time you must have understood that the thrust under FEMA is not on the citizenship, except we will see that 8 neighboring countries where there are certain restrictions carved out for certain strategic reasons. Otherwise, the thrust in FEMA is on residential status. So the person concerned would have to obtain the approvals and fulfill the requirements, if any, prescribed by the other authorities, such as the state governments concerned. The owners to prove his residential status is on the individual as per the extent FEMA provisions if required. So normally there is a lot of confusion in the mind of the people that if somebody comes and stays in India for a period exceeding 182 days, he becomes resident of India. And as we go along, we'll see that even to become a resident of India is not that easy. So there are a lot of people who are planning their residential status. So one has to be very much careful that it is not only the stay, but it is also the intention that is also counted under FEMA. And therefore this FEMA says that the onus is on the person concerned. If there are allegations that that person is not the real resident of India, then he will have to actually prove, coupled with his intentions, and at times even with his conduct. So conduct would be important. As we see in Income Tax Act and other acts, it is the letter which is important, when a letter of law. So FEMA is a kind of a act where apart from the letter is loosely worded. Those of you who are reading FEMA, you will see that it is very loosely worded. But and sometimes there could be two interpretations. And you see, when we advise something, there is always another person who gives a different kind of advice under the FEMA. And the reason being is that both of them may be right, but Reserve Bank will take a final view based on the actual offense, the conduct that has happened, and therefore that law being an economic law cannot be interpreted in the manner we are interpreting the tax laws. So that aspect also has to be kept in mind. There are general restrictions that we have seen on citizens of 8 countries, that is Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, China, Iran, Nepal and Bhutan. These are all neighboring countries, and government doesn't want that they can freely encroach, because it would be very easy for them to encroach and acquire properties in the nearby states. And we are facing the problem. If you go to Assam or Arunachal Pradesh, we are facing the problem. and therefore there are restrictions, and Reserve Bank, when this kind of violations are noticed, Reserve Bank is little harsh also in dealing with these kinds of persons. Then there are general restrictions on buying agriculture, land, plantation property and farm. So these NRIs and PIOs are not allowed to buy this kind of properties because it could fuel speculation in the real estate sector, and therefore these are the restrictions under the law. Pardon me? No, these are only the 8 countries. They have stipulated specifically. So, as far as real estate is concerned, they will look at only at these 8 countries. Because there is otherwise general permission available, no approvals are required. So, Hong Kong is not one of the countries, even China is not the country. So, if there is an Indian citizen who is staying in China and he is a non-resident, or even if he has taken Chinese nationality, there are no restrictions applicable to this kind of persons for acquisition of property in India. Now, as I said, it is very important to understand NRI and PIO, because we cannot blindly advise any person who is NRI or PIO to say that you are freely entitled to buy a property in India, and that we will try to understand. The term NRI has not been defined under the FEMA, so this is looks very ridiculous that the law which actually governs foreign exchange regulations, it has not defined the term very clearly. However, section 2W defines a person resident outside India to mean a person who is not resident in India. So any person who is not resident in India, so we'll have to then understand from the meaning of a person resident in India. And another thing that we have to keep in mind is that NRI has a different meanings and different notifications. I have not dealt with all the notifications, but just for example, I have given a definition under notification number 13, which is dealing with the remittance of assets. It says an NRI is defined to mean a person residing outside India who is a citizen of India. So what it says that NRI should be also holding the Indian passport. Under notification number 5, deposits, is an NRI is defined as a person resident outside India who is citizen of India or is a person of Indian origin. So the definition has been widened, and it will also include PIO. Now PIO also has not been defined in a uniform manner, that also we'll see. And therefore meaning of NRI could change due to the different PIO definitions under various notifications issued by the Reserve Bank of India. Yeah.
The foreign company want to purchase a equivalent property in India.
Okay.
What is the demand?
No, foreign company cannot buy a property in India except for the purpose of business. That will come, as we go along will come. That they can buy only for the purpose of their business, including the if they require for stay of their officials, they can buy the property. But that we'll see. That will come to that. Now, as we understood, the meaning will keep on changing. And for the purpose of immobile property, meaning given under notification number 30 shall be relevant, as NRI does not include PIO. So when we go for immobile property, you have to understand that when NRI means it does not include PIO. However, don't confuse again yourself, because there are various activities even PIO can do. Only we are trying to just understand that NRI will not include PIO unless the regulation specifically permits PIO also to invest in the property. Is that clear? Right? So why we see the differences? If you look at notification number 5, deposits, I think you dealt with in the earlier session. There was a time when India was in a very badly in need of foreign exchange. So they virtually included whoever had a loose connection with India also to invest in India. And that's why you see a very liberal definition as far as deposits are concerned. But if you look at remittance outside India of assets or for investment in immobile properties, then we follow a restricted meaning for NRI or PIO. Also, we have to understand that a person may be resident NRI under FEMA, but he may be yet be resident under the Income Tax Act. So we know, all of us know, that if a person is staying beyond 182 days in India, he'll become a resident under the domestic tax laws of India, subject to the treaty benefits. Under FEMA, it is not a case. Even if he has stayed in India throughout the year, he can still be a non-resident. So that aspect also you have to understand, and that we'll see with the help of an example also. Now, person of Indian origin, the term PIO is also not defined under the Act itself, though it has been defined differently under various notifications issued by the Reserve Bank. Now again we are having a look at notification number 5, which says PIO means a citizen of any country other than Bangladesh or Pakistan. So here we have not excluded all 8 neighboring countries, we have excluded only Bangladesh and Pakistan. If he at any time held Indian passport, or he or either of his parents or any of his grandparents was a citizen of India by virtue of the Constitution of India or the Citizenship Act of 1955, or the person is a spouse of an Indian citizen, or a person referred to in subclause A or B. So as we discussed, that it is a case of a person investing into banks deposits in India, and therefore we carved out a very liberal meaning. If somebody marries a totally a foreigner, and that person happens to be a spouse, she will be considered to be a PIO, and she will be entitled to open an account with a bank in India, keep money in FCNR or NRE accounts also, and that is with a view to altogether different purposes. Now for PIO under the immobile property, it is the meaning given under notification number 21, which is the notification which deals with investment in immobile property, which means that individual not being a citizen of Pakistan or Bangladesh. Now we are talking about those 8 neighboring countries who at any time held an Indian passport, or he or either of his parents or grandparents was a citizen of India by virtue of Constitution of India or Citizenship Act of 1955. So here we are seeing that there are 2, and if we go to next chart, we'll see that person who held Indian passport at any time is the person who is PIO, or whose father, grandfather, mother or grandmother was a citizen of India. These are only 2 categories who are permitted to invest in immobile property. Other 2 kind of persons, though they are PIOs for a different notification, they will not be considered as PIO for investment in immobile properties. So NRI and PIO who is as defined under notification number 21 only is entitled to invest in immobile properties in India. So is that clear so far? Right? Now let us understand the meaning of a person resident in India, who is defined under section 2V of FEMA, which says a person being an individual residing in India for a period of more than 182 days during the course of the preceding financial year. So when you are checking about the residential status of say 14-15, what you will have to see is the stay in the preceding financial year. So if he has not stayed in India for a period of exceeding 182 days in last year, 13-14, even if he has stayed throughout the year during the current year, he will not become a person resident in India. So that aspect one has to keep in mind. And still, even if he has stayed for 182 days in the preceding year, it still does not include 2 categories of persons. So that also we have to understand. And first we are checking about a person who has moved out of India. So there are people who are going outside India for taking employment, or they are migrating. So what FEMA says, that if a person has gone out of India or who stays outside India in either case, for or taking of an employment outside India, or for carrying on outside India a business or vocation outside India, or for any other purpose in such circumstances as would indicate his intention to stay outside India for an uncertain period. So even if that person has stayed in India for a period exceeding 182 days during the previous year, or even throughout the previous year, if he moves outside India for these stated purposes, he will immediately become a non-resident. So the moment he goes outside India, he becomes non-resident under FEMA, and it sounds logical also, because a person, the moment he moves outside India, there is no requirement for the Reserve Bank to regulate, because he will be free to open those foreign exchange accounts, and he should be made free to deal with the foreign exchange the way he wants, and that's why this exception. However, when it comes to a person coming to India, it is very interesting that you have to understand that even if he has resided for more than 182 days during the preceding previous year, it will still not include following categories of persons. A person who has come or stays in India in either case otherwise than for taking up employment in India, or for carrying on in India a business or vocation in India, or for any other purpose in such circumstances as would indicate his intention to stay in India for an uncertain period. So unless these conditions are fulfilled, if that person is staying in India, he will not be treated as a person resident in India. So that aspect you have to keep in mind, that either he has come for an employment in India, the moment he comes for an employment in India, he doesn't become resident in the same year, unless he has stayed for 182 days in the preceding year. Secondly, he should have come in India for starting his proprietary or partnership, or even if he is coming as an executive in a company for doing his business, or for any other purpose. That means he is coming on a transfer of a residence, he is indicating his intention that he would like to now settle down in India, he has moved his assets. So this is something which has to be actually proved with the intention. Merely because somebody has stayed for 2 years in India, he cannot claim. And this has created a menace. A lot of people have planned, and Reserve Bank actually was forced to issue an advisory when it came to buying of properties at Goa. A lot of people who stayed for 182 days in Goa, and on the basis of some advice they purchased the property. And Reserve Bank has issued advisory which is available with almost all the district collectors also. With the immovable property is one area which is managed by the state governments. So whenever these kind of people go for registration of the property, invariably they are shown those regulations, and sometimes the matter is referred to the Reserve Bank of India. Now whatever we discussed now, let us understand with the help of the example. Here is a case of Mr. X who has left India on 1st January 2014 for taking up an employment outside India for the first time. And you have been asked to determine his residential status. And the another question is, can he acquire agricultural land in India before 30th June 2014? And I have given the answers also, that Mr. X will be considered to be a non-resident with effect from 1st January 2014 itself, irrespective of the fact that he was residing in India for more than 182 days in the preceding financial year, in view of the exception A that we have seen in the definition. And therefore, since he is a non-resident, he will not be entitled to buy agricultural land also in India. Second example is of Mr. Y, who is staying in Dubai for past several years, came to India on 1st May 2013 for medical treatment. He is planning to return to Dubai after medical treatment, and doctors have advised him to stay in India up to 31st October 2014. What will be his residential status under FEMA for the financial year 13-14 and 14-15? So as we have seen that notwithstanding his stay exceeding 182 days in India during the current year, Mr. Y was not present in India for 183 days or more during the preceding financial year, hence he continues to be a non-resident during the financial year 13-14. His situation is also covered by exception B of the definition, and as we have seen that he has not come for those three stated purposes. He is not come to settle down in India for an indefinite period, and therefore even if he has stayed say throughout the year, even for 1.5 to 2 years, that person will not become a person resident in India. So that aspect has to be kept in mind. Sometimes when it is challenged, he will have to actually prove that intention, that he never wanted to become a resident. In this kind of cases we have seen, when people have opened and continue to hold FCNR or NRE accounts, and under Income Tax Act, those deposits in FCNR and NRE accounts are tax-free. So this is definitely going on the basis of the intentions of the person. His situation for financial year 14-15 will be covered by exception BC of the definition, since Mr. Y's stay in India will be for a specific purpose and not for uncertain period. And that is the reason why he will still be considered to be a non-resident.
Sir?
Yeah.
So in this example, if we don't consider this line, doctor has advised him to stay in India for 31st October.
your question?
Yes, this is an example of Mr. Y. If we don't consider the point doctor has advised him to stay in India up to 31st October 2014, then we can conclude that for the year 14-15 he is a resident in India.
No. The reason being that even if he has exceeded the period of 182 days, it is not his intention to stay in India indefinitely. So as we have seen that though he was present in India for 182 days during the previous year, apart from that he should be in India for those 3 specified reasons. If he is not in India for those 3 specified reasons, he will not be treated as a person resident in India. Now, this is another example of Mrs. Z, who is a foreign citizen of non-Indian origin, who comes to India for the first time and sets up a proprietary concern in India on 1st August 2013 for carrying on business. What will be his residential status for the financial year 13-14, and can he acquire immovable property in India during the financial year 14-15? Now, Mr. Z will be a non-resident during the financial year 14-15, as he had not stayed in India for a period exceeding 182 days during the preceding financial year. And since Mrs. Z is a non-resident for the financial year 14-15, he will not be entitled to acquire immovable property during 14-15 also, because since he was not in India for a period exceeding 182 days during the previous year. Maybe in the 3rd year, if he has continued, and 3rd year maybe he is entitled to buy a property. And Mrs. Z, presuming that he is a, like, many times used to give the example of Bill Clinton. At that time he was very famous. What Bill Clinton, if he wants to buy a house in India, so Bill Clinton can definitely buy a house in India if he becomes a person resident in India. And for becoming a person resident in India, he should have been in India in the previous year for 182 days. Once he is there, the next year also he will have to wait, because his residential status will be determined on the basis of his stay in the previous year. And in the 3rd year, he may be entitled to buy the property by that time. So it is very difficult. People may not be staying like this in India, and so it would be very difficult for anybody to plan and buy a property in India. Now we are coming, having understood various terms. Now I think the subject would be very simpler. We have to just look at the regulations. The general permission for purchase of immovable property in India by non-resident Indians or PIO. So if anybody wants to buy property either for residential house or for commercial purposes, it's free. No restrictions, no reporting. Anybody can buy if he fits into this definition.
Restriction of number of the residential house or commercial?
No restrictions. So you can buy any number of residential houses or any number of commercial properties also. There are no restrictions. But we have to understand whether it is amounting to real estate business. That we'll see. Now, general permission covers only purchase of residential and commercial property, and it is not available for purchase of agricultural land, plantation property or farmhouse in India. So if somebody wants to buy a farmhouse, a big bungalow, then you better advise if your client happens to be NRI that you cannot buy that property. Because if it is happened merely as by an error, Reserve Bank will take a liberal view. Otherwise, Reserve Bank is a bit harsh on this kind of aspect also, if it's proved that it was some intentional violation. As far as acquisition through gift, NRIs and PIO can freely acquire immovable property by way of gift, either from a person resident in India or an NRI or a PIO. So even a resident can gift, but you have to understand that for resident giving a gift, there is a LRS scheme which stipulates a ceiling of $75,000 per year, and that includes ceiling for the gift also. So gift, if you are gifting a